Hi, I'm Matt Darouse, and this is my presentation on the Diagnosis and Correction of Vocal Faults by James McKinney. So, I believe this book is an ideal choice for a vocal class because it clearly describes how to handle three aspects of vocal education: assessing the student's vocal capabilities, their tone, and then their registration and classification. So, one of the first things the book talks about is how assessing a student's voice is just like a doctor assessing a patient. There's informal observation of the student, so observation and assessment begins the second the student walks in. When you ask him a couple questions, get him kind of talking, those little side conversations in the beginning to see how he speaks, how his resonation works, where the pitch likes to fall when he talks, how he carries himself with his posture, stuff like that. And then self-assessment from the student. You ask the student a couple questions about his voice, what he or her thinks their strengths are, what they need to work on, their weaknesses, stuff like that. And then you test the student. Do a couple warm-up type exercises like singing up and down the scale, going higher in his or her range, lower in his or her range, so you can really find where the strengths are in range and where the weaknesses are, where the support mostly is, where there's a lot of lack of support, stuff like that. And so from these assessments, you can come up with three questions. So what are the faults? What do they struggle with? What is a habit they have that is happening? Do they sing flat a lot? Do they use too much breath? Is it too tense? Stuff like that. What are the causes of said faults? Going off of that, are they creating too much tension? Are they using too much breath in their voice? Is their posture bad? Stuff like that. And then what can fix the faults? So say with too much tension, you want to use to tell them to fix, keep it looser, keep it open, stuff like that. So it's just finding ways to fix the faults and having those methods. And although you can have certain solutions to fix certain things, like one specific medicine cures one certain disease with like doctors, not every solution will work with every student. So even though there are certain tricks you can use that will help, and it will help a lot of people, they won't help every student. So you must be able to experiment with many different types of solutions with every singer so you can get the unique solution and cure, so to say, for each student. So, the sound in general. So 4 things must be present for sound to occur, period. There must be a vibrating object. So in terms of voice, that's your vocal folds kind of slapping together is not really the term, but like they vibrate together and they make pitches. A power source, something that will help push the sound out, which is again like your vocal folds, your diaphragm. It's helping push it out. Vowels help it come out. And then medium to transmit the sound. So most of the time with sound, air is what transmit the sound. So when you push sound out of your mouth, air helps it travel through the air, stuff like that. And then something to receive the vibrations, which is your ear when it comes to sound. Because when your sound transmits, your ear picks it up and interprets the information. And so the book describes there are 2 types of sounds. There are noises and then there are musical tones. So a noise is kind of just like a speaking voice or a clap or a car door shutting. While more modern music has used that as musical tones, the book separates these from regular musical tones and the musical tones. So it separates it because musical tones, it says, are more complex because they have other frequencies called high number partials. So when you sing a certain note, there's not only the frequency of the note, so say a middle C, there's middle C pitch. But there's also many other frequencies above it and below it. There's things called overtones. So it's not just one noise, it's not just one pitch, there's many other pitches that come together to make that one pitch. All right. Posture. Posture is extremely important with singing because it affects almost how everything works. So, say when you come with the skeletons, because the skeleton is, your bones, it's the main support for your body. And if you have bad posture, if you slump, if you do stuff like that, if your neck's low, you're taking the support off of your skeleton and you're making your muscles kind of pick up the slack for your skeleton. So it causes a lot of tension when you sing. So it makes it worse. It also, if you slump over, your lungs and your diaphragm are shut. They don't get space to open and stuff like that. So having bad posture can cause a lot of problems with your singing. So your body should be warmed up to singing long periods, just like an athlete should warm up their bodies to play. So when athletes, they stretch, they do lunges, stuff like that, they get their muscles loose and prepared and ready, so they're not tense, so it's ready to do that strenuous periods of exercise. Much like the body for singing should be much the same way, because with posture, you don't want your muscles tense and you don't want all of this built up pressure in your body. So really stretching your muscles and stretching out your body helps it become more loose, so your singing is more loose and you have more beautiful tones. Breathing and support. So air enters the system because of pressure differences caused by the diaphragm. So if you can imagine, you get one of those rubber balls and you squeeze the rubber ball. It's got the little holes on the end. All the air squeezes out of it. When you let go of that ball, it opens and air fills the ball. That's because there's a pressure difference when you open its release. Air also always loves to have equal pressure in all places. So when you release that ball, air rushes into the ball to make equal pressure in that space. It's also how your diaphragm works. Your diaphragm is that ball that squeezes and squeezes all the air from your lungs out. And then when you release your diaphragm, it drops. And it does it very much in the back of your back, in your lower back and stuff too, in your side abdomens and stuff. It drops and it opens. And when it opens, you're more or less, you don't want to use the phrase you're bringing in oxygen because that makes it feel forced. What more is happening is air escapes into your diaphragm because it's wanting to create that equal pressure in your diaphragm and outside. And so inhalation and singing is usually quicker than normal breathing, because if I breathe here to speak, survival, it's a slower inhale and a slower exhale. When you sing, you want a quicker breath because you want to get more breath in as quickly as possible. So when you drop it, you're a quicker inhalation to sing. And so a good posture for breathing, as we talked about like last time, you want your chest comfortably high. You don't want it so high that your shoulders are lifting up, because that causes a lot of bad tension. So you just want your chest comfortably high, your lower abdomen comfortably in. You don't want it out, super far out, because that causes a lot of tension. You want it almost even, a little farther in than your chest, so you have an even distribution. And then your upper abdomen, when you do that, you should be able to just kind of move your upper abdomen, and it's fine, because this creates as less tension as possible, as I've said 100,000 times. It creates less tension and it makes it easier to create better tones. So, phonation, the actual making of sound. Most sound when you speak and sing originates from the larynx. So that's where your vocal folds are, where they reside. And so most phonation from your voice comes from the larynx and your vocal folds vibrating together when you sing or speak higher or sing and speak lower. Your vocal folds stretch and then compress, so it does that. And so phonation must work in cooperation with breath to make beautiful sounds, because you have to have the equal distribution of sound to breath, because you don't want this breathy sound. Well, you also don't want no breath come out, stuff like that. So you need an even distribution of breath to sound to really make the best sounding tone. And so, again, the best sound from a singer is made when there is the least amount of tension in the larynx. Because if you really squeeze the larynx and try to sing, it not only can hurt your vocal folds, but it also just makes a bad sound. It really is forced, and it's just bad. So you want as little tension as possible so you can just speak freely, and yeah. Registration. So register has had a lot of different meanings from a lot of different people. Many different educators and researchers use the term register for many different things. The most common ones are a particular part of a singer's range. So how high someone can sing or how low someone can sing. So say if you're a tenor and you talk about the register from a C4 to a G sharp A4. You could call that your head voice, so the higher, lighter, floatier part of your voice. Or then you talk about lower, like G3 to C3, and you're a lot lower, and you're in your chest voice. That's what it's called. It's called your chest voice. And then that's also an area of resonance. So where does your voice resonate the most? So say someone at a G or an A can really create the most resonance and can fill up a room like that. And it's from, say, G to B flat or C. They'd consider that an area of resonance. Say that is a particular register for them. And then a certain timbre. So how high and floaty the voice is, or how low and drummy, bassy the voice is. So those certain timbres are considered registers. And then a certain part of the voice separated by vocal breaks. So the same thing with head voice and chest voice. So that's to say you can go from head voice to falsetto. So you go from singing in your normal voice high to you switch the falsetto. There's a specific break that happens. So say one note or two that really it breaks when you try to sing in normal voice, and it like switches and flips into falsetto. Those certain stuff like that. So there are 4 proven registers that most educators and researchers can agree on. There's a normal voice. So it's also considered something called full voice. So your normal notes that you can sing in your range without having to flip to a certain thing. Vocal fry, which is the lowest of the low in your voice. So you get to a G, and then you kind of aren't full voice. You're like, oh. It's more like it's a fry, so it's not a full tone. There's falsetto, which is really only common in males. So you get to, say, C5, stuff like that. It's really out of males and boys' ranges. So they can't sing it, so they just they flip into a falsetto. It's the act of almost singing. A lot of people tell their students singing like a girl, which it just only means they're singing very high notes. They just aren't using their full voice. And then whistle tone, which is something that a lot of females have. Some males might have it, but I've never really heard the term used with male singers, is that it's very high. It's almost like it's cutting out a lot of the overtones, and it's just a very high whistle note that's very high. So it kind of loses some of the other pitches in it, like overtones. It's just one kind of whistle throw. And so, like I've been saying, some of these registers are not accessible by every person. Not everybody has a falsetto. Not everybody has a whistle tone. Not everybody has a very full vocal fry. And so, voice classification. So, a lot of educators like to rush voice classifications and make it permanent. So, say a boy in middle school has a very high voice, and they're like, you're going to sing tenor, or you're going to sing alto. That creates a permanence effect in a lot of kids, and it shouldn't be a permanent or a quick to judge thing, because people's voices change all the time, and all voices can change throughout their life. So it's not good to have something rushed or really make it permanent, because it could damage a student. Because as it goes, choir settings can cause many misclassifications, because a lot of people, like I said, are putting a high voice part, say, in middle school, and their voices drop. And instead of switching their voice parts, they make them stay on their original voice part, which can damage the voice a lot. So it's a very bad thing to make things permanent. So then in choir settings, and also many people have low voice or middle voices. That's what it's classified. Like they don't have. Sorry, just gonna plug this in real quick. Where is it? There we go. So a lot of people are in the middle voice. Like they're not crazy high or crazy low. They're just kind of in the middle, and they are either chosen to sing too low a part. So I'm going to use a male baritone as an example. There are many male voices that are considered baritones, and they can either be chosen to sing too low, they are chosen to sing bass, and a lot of the notes in the bass part are too low for them, so they cannot sing it, and it damages their voice. Or they are a baritone, and they are put on tenor, and they are supposed to sing very, very high parts and high notes that they cannot make. And so they both are bad, but the book also explains that having someone sing too high is almost more damaging than singing too low. So this misclassifications of choir settings can cause a lot of problems. And so range, although it's very important for voice classification, like if you can't sing certain tenor notes, you shouldn't sing tenor. But it's not just about the range, it's about your timbre and comfortable ranges. So yes, say a tenor can sing down to a low F or low E, but that's not comfortable. They can't just comfortably sing that, and their voice is a higher lifted tone anyway, so they're more comfortable singing the higher, like middle C, D, E, F, G's. That's where they're more comfortable. So they should, just because he can sing the low notes doesn't mean they should sing bass. They should sing higher, they should sing timbre. Same as ladies. If a female can sing a high A, congratulations, but that's not necessarily where they can comfortably sing. If they can comfortably sing the G down to like the middle C and maybe even a little bit lower, their voice part should be in correlation with where comfortably they can sing. So resonation. So resonation is defined in the book as when the timbre and intensity of a sound is enhanced. So it adds more tones, it adds more humph to it, it really fills a room more. So the size, shape, and type of opening are all things that affect resonation. So vowels. So a lot of the basic vowels that people use are a, e, o, u. And so the way certain notes can resonate are very much determined by how those vowels shaped and how they go out. So like say high notes, I'm going to go from personal experience. I'm better singing high on the E vowel because it really narrows it and it really forces the air to narrow and shoot out, so I can get more resonation from an E vowel. And so as we're going back to again, the key to resonation is trying to have as little tension as possible. So you really want to keep it open and not squeeze or like shout or really widen and like boombox, megaphone the vowel, but you also want to darken the tone, so you don't want to pull it all the way to the back of your throat and darken it, because that can cause some issues not only with health, but also with just the sound. Articulation. So consonants are the key to articulation. Whoa, surprise. So the book explains that there are two types of consonants, voiced consonants and unvoiced consonants. An example I like to use a lot with voiced and unvoiced consonant is there's a spoken Z and a whispered S. So voiced consonants would be the Z, the spoken Z, and then unvoiced would be that whispered S, because the Z really has more of a pitch to it. So you can sing a Z and then the S. You can't make a pitch on the S without switching to the Z. So, and maintaining a good legato or transition between vowels is essential for any singer. So you want, of course, to be able to transition like o, e, but you don't want it to be like you're banging on a drum like o, e. You want a better flow between o, e. You want a more flow through it. So you want to teach when you sing that you really want that legato and you want the good transition between the vowels and articulations and consonants. So, So, yeah. The speaking voice. This is something that a lot of books and a lot of educators don't talk about, but it's something that really needs to be addressed a lot, because the speaking voice works a lot like the singing voice, even though it has a little bit of difference. So speech moves at a faster rate than singing. So the pitch and how you speak is just, you speak faster than you sing. although we preach in singing to have like phrases and speaking lines like that, singing requires so much more effort and more people think about it more, that the singing is a little bit slower. Speech, everybody knows how to do it, so they just speak at a faster rate, and it causes people to speak at a faster rate. Teaching good speaking habits is essential to good singing because, like I said, a lot of people's voices, they can talk differently than they speak, and because we talk so much and speak so much, we kind of neglect our vocal health when we speak because we just speak. We don't think about how we're speaking or how we should speak. So say someone sings like this and they're very high and they're very lifted, but when they talk, they just kind of give up and they're like, what's up? Like they kind of forget everything and they just kind of really compress, put pressure on the vocal folds when they speak. So you really want to get the articulation when they speak. You want to teach the articulation when they speak, and you want to have it high and lifted and like they're doing something, and not just let them drone, because it really affects the vocal speech. So that's why, like when you're speaking rhythms and speaking text, it's essential to really teach good speaking habits so they can translate it to better singing. And so there are 3 faults to vocal speaking. The pitch. So again, how they speak, you want that higher lifted tone because it's a little easier on the vocals fault. You don't want them to get lazy and just drone and just talk like this. Like there are 3 faults to vocal speaking. Like you don't want the drone like that. So pitch is one. Quantity, how much they speak. So speaking a lot and how much you're speaking and how much strain you're putting on your vocal cords can really affect it, because you're really just, when you're banging on your chords all day long and singing and doing this and doing that, it really can put a strain on your chords. As to when it comes to singing time, with this much quantity, you're really just killing your voice. And then the rate, so how fast you're speaking. So so the rate at which you're speaking. So you talk really fast, you talk really fast, you talk like this, you talk like this, and your voice, your vocal cords moving, they're moving, they're moving, they're moving, they're moving, they're moving. When you keep doing like that, it's like sprinting. When you just sprint, your legs get really tired, and then they get exhausted, and then they kind of pop out on you. It's the same thing with speaking. You talk so fast, and you have so many things to do, and this. You're constantly just bang, over and over and over again, and not giving them a chance to let up. So it really causes it to strain. So with the rate, get to slow down, and sometimes actually even speeding up, because when you're only talking like this, you're still doing the same thing because it's still having to make noises for longer. So if you're talking like this, your vocal folds still have to make sound for those entire things. So you want it to be kind of to the point, short, straight, but you also just want to keep speaking, and really getting the strain on that. Coordination. So singing is a lot harder than a lot of people think. It requires more of muscle coordination than muscle strength. So instead of just your chords, so you're lifting weights and you're just like, I can lift this heavy. Yes, but with singing, it's more, I'm able to move my vocal folds and use my diaphragm and keep my posture up and keep my palate lifted, stuff like that. It just requires so many different things to happen at once. So warm-up routines should be designed to help get your voice warmed up. So just get it used to singing and speaking, extending your range, using it to really hit those high notes, really help those high notes, or those low notes, get them ready. Activate your jaw and palates so they're not tight. Same thing I talked about earlier with stretching your body to get it used to singing. You want to do that with your jaw and your palates, or really get it big about lifting your palate and keeping your jaw loose so that it can move and it's not tight and you're struggling trying to open it. And then activate your resonation. Use certain vowels, use certain consonants to really get the resonation out, and so you can really focus on that so they feel the resonation and they can keep it throughout the rehearsal. And then depth must be added to the voice as it goes higher rather than it becoming thin. So when you go higher, that was what I was talking about earlier with phonation. You really want to try to get a good tone without darkening it, and that's especially true when you get higher. You want it to get a little darker, you want it to get a little higher, you want to get a little fullness to it. So like You really want it, instead of going like this where it gets really thin and it's more shouty instead of breathy, and then you don't want it breathy, so you really want the more depth as you go higher. So in conclusion, I feel this book is a very strong choice for the class because it touches on things that many books don't, like how sound works, how the vocal folds work with the larynx, and how breathing and the support works and stuff like that. It really focuses on a lot of the technical things that other books do not. A lot of other books are just like, oh, they sing with a breathier tone. Tell them to do this. This book really teaches you why, like how it works, and stuff like that. And so it explains how the apparatus also works, like the vocal folds and the larynx, and how the vowels transmit it and the air transmit the sound. So it really talks about how the voice works and how to fix it, instead of just saying, all right, fix it. It's very good on teaching the voice and teaching it how it works. So thank you, and I hope you take this book into consideration.